Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome. Hope you're all doing well and everybody's happy. All right, we're about to get underway for our Wednesday morning live stream. And have some fun with some painting. Hope you're all doing well. This is our regular Wednesday morning live stream. My name's Rod from the Learn to Paint Academy, for those who don't know me. And we try and do this every Wednesday morning, my time in Brisbane. And this is really our sort of beginner level look at painting, how to improve our painting, how do we get better results with our painting, and how do we apply the Moore method of painting, which is what we teach at the Learn to Paint Academy. So today we're going to do something just a little bit different from what we normally do, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. But first of all, let me say good morning to Foxy, g'day. G'day Gail in Georgia. G'day Margaret in Victoria Point, and Sherry in Texas, welcome. G'day Sajada in Nevada. Oh, hang on one sec folks. G'day mate, thanks for that. Yeah. Cheers mate. Sorry about that folks. I got mail. It's always exciting. Where are we up to? Yeah, Sajada in Nevada, Sonia in Melbourne, chilly in Melbourne. It was chilly here this morning too. G'day Butcher in South Florida. Janet in Fort Wayne, 100 degrees. Beautiful, love that. Morning Debbie, morning Sonia. Sonia likes the hearts and confetti. Morning Tatiana. We are covered here by Sahara sand dust in South Florida. Well, who would have thought? That's blown a long way. Morning Annette. Morning Manju in Canada. Morning Jenny on the Gold Coast. Morning Marie in Wilton. Where's Wilton? Which country is Wilton in? Morning Sharon, how are you? New Zealand. Morning Linda in Arizona. I think Arizona would have a climate that would suit my body. Nice and hot. Morning Tanya in Canberra. Morning Cindy in Ontario. And where are we up to here? Let me get rid of that. Where are we up to here on Facebooks? Good morning Rosalie. Good morning Peter. Good morning Yvonne in WA. And Sheena in Melbourne. And to all my friends in Victoria and New South Wales, my heart goes out to you all. But I suspect that Queensland will be, or at least southeast Queensland, will be in a similar predicament by the end of the month, by the end of September. Morning Steve in Ontario. Morning Gail. Morning Diane on the Gold Coast. Yay. Heading to the Gold Coast this weekend for our Brian Cook workshop at Wisteria Cottage. So looking forward to that. Morning Lindley in Greenvale, North Queensland. 5.7, wow. It was chilly here this morning too, about 7 degrees. G'day Steve, 109 in Ontario, Canada. I think it's Ontario, isn't it Steve? Yeah, wow, that's hot. Malay, good morning. Morning Valerie in Bow Desert. Morning Rosie. And on the other Facebook, g'day John, where it's always hot. G'day Magdalene, where it's probably not. Morning Linda, morning Julie in Yeppoon. Love Yeppoon. Oh, can't wait to get back to Yeppoon. And the Great Keppel Islands there. Morning Beverly. Morning Barbara in Mornington Peninsula. Morning Betty. 6 weeks stuck at Maroochydore. Oh, that's no good, Betty. G'day Tracy. All right. Well, if I haven't said good morning to you all, good morning. Where did we get up to? Morning Terry. Survived Hurricane Henry. Good to hear. Morning Linda. Oh, Wilton's on the outskirts of Sydney. There you go. I didn't know that. Rajoka, morning. Well, Jenny, fingers crossed we won't, but you never know. G'day Fred. All right, now we're going to do something different this morning. If I haven't said good morning to you, then I'll just say one big collective good morning to everybody. What we're going to do this morning, or actually just before that, some of you may have heard, in the last challenge and so on, I was talking about this idea of doing a painting with the masters workshop / challenge. And so I've been thinking about how we might do that, how we might run it and so on. And that's coming up, and it's going to just obviously be subject to how my schedule unfolds in September, October. But if I can do it in September, I will. because I'm quite excited about it, right? So we're going to do this idea of painting with the masters. We're going to take, it's going to be Impressionist masters because that's what I like. And we're going to take an Australian Impressionist. We're going to take a couple of the French ones, a couple of Russians, maybe an American, right? So half a dozen or so. And we will we'll pick one of their paintings and we'll go in deep and have a real close look at analysing their painting and then try to recreate it. And we'll do it as a challenge / workshop. So I'm still formulating my ideas on how to do it. So part of it will be free. Everyone can join in. But then if you're a member of the Learn to Paint Academy, there'll be a lot more content that I'll add to it that goes in a lot deeper. And there'll be more, maybe in the free version, we might look at, say, 4 or 5 painting projects. In the for the members, we might do, a dozen or so over time. So I'm quite excited about that. So let me know if you're excited about painting with the masters. I think it's a good thing to study those that have gone before us, and the old ateliers in Europe and so on. That's how they learnt to paint, was studying from the masters. Yet they'd go to the Louvre and copy the paintings in the Louvre and so on. So I figured, well, we should probably spend more time. And when I say we should, it's usually because that's what I'm thinking I should be doing to improve my painting, right? I'm thinking, how can I get better? How can I go to another level? Perhaps what I should do is to stop trying to move forward and look back into history and go, okay, well, what did they know about painting that I haven't learnt yet, right? So really studying the masters and trying to recreate their paintings is what we are going to look at. And part of that I thought we'd have a look at today, right? So this is a painting by the Russian Impressionist, Constantine Curvin. And this actual painting that you can see on the screen here was painted in Paris. So yeah, everyone's saying, yes, I'd love to do that, can't wait. Van Gogh, I wasn't going to include Van Gogh, but perhaps as one of the bonus, additional projects we might do a Van Gogh, but I consider him to be post-impressionist. I'm quite excited about this as a project, as an idea, because Impressionism across a range of different versions of that is definitely my preferred style of painting, right? So the closer we can study them and then adapt those lessons into what we do, the better. So Constantine Cora is a Russian Impressionist who actually spent quite a bit of time in France and in Paris at the tail end of the Impressionism period. And this painting you can see on the screen here is one of his. And it's the Seine River in Paris, right? So you can see that very closely aligned to the short sort of brush marks, the optical colour illusions that the French Impressionists were using. And, I thought this was a really good painting for us to have a look at. Now, I should also point out that the reason why I've chosen this particular artist is because in the Learn to Paint Academy, each month we do a master's analysis where we pick one master artist and we take a closer look at their life and their paintings. And hopefully it's been of help for the members who have had a chance to go through those. And so Constantine Curvin is our master for the month, right? And I'll be uploading further videos of his today and tomorrow. So look out for that if you're a member and have access to that. So I thought, well, we might as well just pick one of his paintings and have a look at what he did, right? And so today what we're going to do is we're going to do a little value study of this painting. And the reason why I've chosen this one is because if you look at that, there's a whole range of different colours in there. There's yellows, there's greens, there's a bit of an orange in a few spots, there's blues and purples. And it's a little bit deceiving in terms of, it's easy to see the colour. But what I've been trying to train myself and our students on is how do I see the values that underpin the colour, right? In our values course in the Learn to Paint Academy, we look at the value of colour because colour has a value, right? And so I'm looking at old master artists and going, okay, what's the real values pattern here that we can learn from? And so when I convert this into a values black and white pattern, you can see here, and this is why I chose this particular painting, you can see here that the values, there's not a huge amount of contrast. It's very tight on the values scale, I would consider it to be. And so I thought we'd do a little study of this painting in black and white, just to get a feel for how the values are in this painting. And you can see that the darkest darks really sit underneath the tree line and in the boats. There's a couple of accents in the boats where they've got the darkest darks, but it's really not that dark on the value scale. And then the mass of trees has sort of the next darkest dark, and then everything else is quite light on the value scale, right? Now, a couple of you mentioned NOTAN studies the other day. If we were to do this as a NOTAN study, like a two-value NOTAN study, then we'd have this big mass of trees as, you know, what the one dark value, and then everything else pretty much is going to be, you know, if we're chunking it up to two or three values, is going to be a light value. So we've got a dark passage and a light passage in this painting here, right? So we're going to have a little go at recreating that. And part of doing this is just to train my eye, and I recommend you to have a go at it as well, to train your eye just to be able to see the underlying values. Where are the patterns of darks and lights, right? And then utilizing color, sure, later on, to be able to represent that dark and light passage. And you know, the more you can train your eye to see it in a subject, the better you'll get at painting. I promise you. I absolutely promise you that. I mean, it's not the only thing that needs to be taken into consideration, but it's certainly a key thing. I guess the other, first thing I always look at is composition. Does this have a pleasing composition, and is it well structured and designed? And I'd say for the most part, I'm not going to suggest that one of the great masters of all time doesn't have a good composition. Although not all of them did, but... So anyway, that's what we're going to do. We're going to have a go at that. We're going to do, I'm only going to do a small little painting, a little study. I'm not going to try and get it perfect. I really just want to try and map out where the different patterns of darks and lights are, the value scale, right? So a couple of little things. In the spirit of experimentation, I'm going to use this oil pad by Art Spectrum. Art Spectrum's an Australian company, but you can buy oil pads from a whole range of different manufacturers. This is an A4 size. It says paper type with a linen texture. Now, I've never used this before, but I thought I'd give it a go. So it's quite a heavy paper. It is 300 GSM. It says it's acid-free, which is good. It's archival. So I've never painted on it before, but we'll give it a go and see what happens. Let me know if you guys have ever painted on, if you've ever painted on canvas oil pads like this. All right. Okay, let us get underway. So I'll keep you posted on the Painting with the Masters program. I'm hoping we'll be able to fit it into sort of the back half of what are we in now? Oh, September. Back half of September, all right? So if possible, we'll definitely run with that. Now, let's come down to the palette here. And what I'm going to do is, first of all, mix up a value scale, right? I'm going to use French ultramarine blue. I'm going to use burnt sienna just for the sake of speed. But really, what is burnt sienna? It's just red and yellow, right, with a touch of blue into it. So it's the three primary colours I'm going to use to mix up the black or the dark, and then I'm going to use my white. And I've also printed out these value scales because I want to just test my accuracy. 10 value scale and a 5 value scale. And I highly recommend you have these printed out in your studio, and you'll find these in our values course in the Learn to Paint Academy. So you'll want to make sure you get a copy of that. Let me just grab my cuppa. All right, and we shall get underway. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about how to mix a value scale because I cover it in the values course, right? And in a number of other places in the Learn to Paint Academy. in the various courses and so on. So basically you just want to get to your darkest dark first, which I think if I mix those two together in equal proportions I should get close. And then I want my white. Now what I'll do is I'll start out with a 5 value scale, but looking at, just looking at the little painting, I may have to mix some of the lighter values in between, the steps in between. Do you ever have problems trying to get your lids back on your paint tubes? Alright, hopefully that's got it. Palette knife. Okay, so all I've got to do is just mush these two together. And I should get to a reasonable dark. Now don't worry about black. People get caught up on, oh, it needs to be black. It doesn't need to be black. It just needs to be a dark, right? And that's dark enough. Okay, so if I have a look at my value scale, I should cut these out. You can see that's pretty much my darkest dark there, right? Oh, can you see that? That's my darkest dark. And I'm close enough for the purpose of the exercise. So don't get caught up getting too concerned about that. What I do need to do now is mix up the middle value, which is this one here. Now my printer is putting a little bit of a pink tinge to everything here. So I just need to be mindful of that. I'll take that tone, mix that in. Okay, and you can see it's gone to a neutral grey, which is pretty much what we want. I may have to take these value scales up to the Officeworks, and because it's not accurate, I'm not happy about that. My printer's just gone on the blink. Hang on for 1 second, folks. Nobody panic, nobody move. All right, got my colour wheel. This has a value scale on it. Now, one of the mistakes I always make is I always try and mix my middle value too dark. At the moment it's sitting around about value 3, right? I need to lighten that off. So I did this the other day. I bought a bust, which I'm quite excited about it, and we'll use it in future live streams. But I bought this bust, and I mixed up a 5 value scale, but I was too dark. I wasn't accurate enough, and so it came out too dark. But I'm going to do the same study about 10 times and see if I can make adjustments each time. Okay, how's that looking? I reckon it's going to be closer. Yeah, it's getting closer, isn't it? It's probably more about value 5 at the moment, or value 4. Touch more white. Now notice I'm using paper towel each time. I don't want to dirty up this white, so I'll just clean it before I go into that pile. Okay. Now I think that's probably going to give me my value 5, pretty much. It might even be somewhere in between value 5 and 6 there, which I'm happy about. I'm not going to go for, absolute perfection here today. We're just going to get it as close as we can. So I'll take a bit more of that dark. I'm probably not even going to use that darkest dark, so it's too dark for this particular study. Okay, now just when I finish this, I will just check in and make sure everyone's still with me. I think that was too much white. Way too much white. It's okay. Take that. Okay, so that's roughly halfway. So around about there. Value 3, 3 or 4. It's not value 2. But I don't know that we need to really mix up that end. I only use that as a starting point. It's probably about a value 3. Somewhere there. Okay. So I'm more interested in the lighter end. And then I'll quickly pause just to make sure the interwebs are still working and that people are still with me and all of that. Okay. So what I'll do, I don't need that much of this darker value. So I'll just bring that into here. That should be about halfway. So that's going to be a bit too dark. But what I'll do, I'll just take some of that and I'll just pop it there as an intermediary step, which might be useful. That's a bit better. Now that's probably looking a little bit light, so I'll just take a little touch of the mid value there. So that's the middle value. This one's in between these two. And then we need another little spot just before we get to the white. Probably not going to use white in it. There's a little bit of white, looks like a cloud above the trees. Okay. So hopefully that's not too confusing. That's our middle value. Then that's our next value from there, which would be about a value 7, then a value 8, then a value 9, and then a value 10. Okay, so I'm mixing up more of the light range because looking at the painting overall, I feel it has more light value in it than dark values. Okay, so I'm just going to pause briefly. If you have a question, type it in now. I'm actually pausing to have a sip of my cuppa. Nah, just kidding. I just want to make sure you're all still with me. Glued to the screen, says Sajada. Yeah, I'm using water mixable oils. Sonia said I've used the Mop Mart signature canvas pad. It's quite nice, terrific. I've not used canvas pads, so I'd be interested to see. Quite like the thickness of it. So Jenny and Margaret are using it. Okay, good. Annette has problems with the lid on the paint. I'm glad it's not just me. I always feel very unco, like it must be something wrong with me. You know, I can't get the damn lid on. But that's okay. Marie's painting on an acrylic pad. Awesome. Okay. Similar to Reeves acrylic paper. Very good. Hey Darlene, sorry got here late. Is there a reference photo? There is a reference photo which I posted into the Learn to Paint Academy Facebook page and also in the members area, so you'll find it in those two areas. Looks easy when you mix the greys. Well, I've done it a lot of times, Steve, so the more you do, the more easier it gets. And also I took a shortcut. I used burnt sienna, you know, with the ultramarine blue. If I just use the 3 primer colours, it might have taken a little bit longer just to get that dark shade right initially. Shades of grey, Roxana's working on at the moment, terrific. Gail said I've used canvas paper, surprisingly good, okay. Be interesting to see how we go. Pauline used pad for the Unleashed 2 challenge, fantastic. John said he uses them all the time, acrylic 280. This one is designed for oils, so it says. It says oil pad, so I'll be interested to see how it holds up. Cheap practice, says Terry. Okay, good. All right. If you have a question, top it in now. Linley says I do practice studies on the pad, seem to be fine. Okay, good. I've used paper like for acrylics and so on. Jenny said I use a canvas pad, it's soaked up a lot of paint. Okay, well that's what I'll be interested to see, whether it's a thirsty surface and so on. All right, now if you're just joining us late, then what we're doing is we are going to look at this painting here by Constantine, I can never remember his surname, Constantine Curvin, and he's a Russian impressionist. He is our master artist analysis that we're going to do this month in the Learn to Paint Academy, and we're going to have a go at doing this as a value study, just so we can look at the colour picked. I'm going to work off the colour reference, and I'm going to try and get the values in. And I'm going to spend 15 minutes doing this, right? It's going to be a little study. I'm not going to agonise over it and try and get it perfect. I just want to get a feel for the underlying values pattern there, right? I love in this colour version that purple shadow tone under the bridge there. How good's that? Just noticed that. A little bit of green in there, but he's got this purplish shadow tone. So that's what we're doing. And part of the reason why we're doing it is, one, Constantine Curvin is our master's analysis subject for August in the Learn to Paint Academy. So that'll be uploaded in the next day or so. And the other reason why we're doing it, for those who are joining us a bit late, is we are going to have a workshop / challenge coming up soon, studying the master artists. We'll call it Painting with the Masters, or Painting with the Impressionists, I think is probably a better term. And we're going to pick half a dozen Impressionist artists, and we're going to have a go at recreating their paintings, right? So in preparation for that, we'll do values studies. And so that's what we're doing here, is a values study of this terrific painting. Painted in Paris, even though he was a Russian impressionist. So first steps are to find your glasses. Second step is to pick an appropriate sized drawing brush. Okay. And I'll take a middle value. And as I said, look, this is going to be a 15-minute little exercise here. I'm not going to... I've got to be careful I don't stand in front of the camera here, don't I? Got a small surface here. I'm not going to really fuss with this too much. Definitely has a different feel. So I just want to get a really rough little drawing in here. There's a whole lot of stuff going in there that's hard to determine what that is. But big shapes. The trees come out over the halfway mark, so they're coming out to about here. Okay. Falling into about there. Actually, that's a bit too far. I need to take that bridge, cross a bit more to about there. I'll bring the trees to about there. And then in behind there, of course, we have the buildings here. Ooh, it definitely feels a very different surface to paint on. Not sure that I like it so far. There's a row of buildings and things in there. It's kind of grippy, if that makes sense. That's okay. probably more like so. And then we've got the boat in there. Got this main boat, fits around about there. And there's things happening along the embankment there, or along underneath the bridge. Probably market stalls and artists painting portraits and things. Don't have that line there right. It's probably more coming from about there down. That's better. So there's all sorts of things going on in there, and there's a little bit of something there. I've got this shadow that fits underneath there. So that's the rough sort of drawing, right? And when I say rough, I'm talking really rough, because I just want this to be a 15-minute little sort of thumbnail sketch. Rosalie says she gessos the canvas pads to make them toothy. Yeah. So, with the rough drawing in, I kind of feel that I've got my buildings just slightly out of sequence here. That one's probably needs to be a little touch higher. There. So it'll be interesting to see whether I can apply wet paint here. So now I'm going to go to our darkest dark in here, and we know that along this bottom part of the trees there, that's where it's going to be at its darkest, but it's not going to be a black. It's actually going to be somewhere between these here, I think. Just try that. Yeah, I think it's somewhere along that sort of line there. So just along the top of this the wall there, and sort of up underneath these bushes. That's where the darkest dark is, as far as I can tell. And that boat there, that boat there. A little bit on that one, a couple of accents there and there, but I won't get too fussed about those. Okay, so that's the darkest dark pattern that we can see. And then pushing up into that, come to the next value. Up into here. To the top of that tree up there. I'm going to raise that one up a little bit there. So basically what we want to try and do is get this to read in the same manner as as the colour version, right? So just looking at the pattern of light and dark, that's really all I'm exploring here is, and training out, training my eye. Hopefully you see the benefit in doing the same, of being able to look at something in colour and going, I can see the subtle shifts in value there. I know where I need to make my greens just that little bit lighter or a little bit darker. Okay. Now, the water's actually probably, there's marks in the water, but I'll come to the water towards the end. There are a few little bits and pieces down along the continuation. I'm standing in front of it, aren't I? I'm sorry about that. Sorry. I mean, there's absolutely no definition at all in what any of that is. So I just make the assumption that it's things on the river embankment, like vendors selling things, and maybe a coffee stand. Okay, there is another dark value, which is around about a middle of those two there, which is this purple underneath there. So the shadow there is going to fit in there. There's a little bit of a dark there, a little bit of dark there. Okay, and then we come back. This building here has got a feel of shadow, and I'll just come down to this next step, and we'll just put that part of that building there into shadow. There's some shadow in there, some shadow down there. And then we come down to quite a bit lighter. No, it's not that light. It's probably more that tone there. Now, there's a lot of little nuances and subtleties in just even in those buildings, which I'm kind of ignoring most of it. I'm just chunking up to, or trying to group values together there, right? Just to keep it simple. You can do a more detailed version of it if you want. My concern here and now is, and the way I'll combat that is I'll just take a darker tone and I'll just pop it in there, just to give me a little bit more contrast to the buildings. Okay, now the sky is quite confusing because it's purpley blue, but it's a fairly light value. of the mistakes, I guess you could call it a mistake. One of the things to look out for is I'm only using one brush. When you're dealing with darks and so on, if you don't clean that brush properly, I can carry the darks into my lights, or I can still have a little bit of the darker tone in the brush. And that will just affect my values pattern. See, that's a little bit dirty, all of that. I had darker tone in the brush. I think I could probably get used to this canvas pad. So if you've just joined us, we're just doing a quick little value study of a painting by Constantine Curvin, Russian Impressionist, just to get a bit of a feel for how he grouped his darks and his lights together. And it's a 10-minute little values study, so certainly not trying to paint it as a accurate representation, but more as a where did he put his darks and lights is really what we're going for here. Okay, and again, the next darkest dark is really down in the water here, but I'll come to that. Let's just come in maybe to this wall here, and it's around about the same value. I mean, there's patches in there of different shifts in colour and temperature, but it's around about the same value overall as the sky. I'm going to go one tone darker. Just as a block in, and then I'll put some lighter tones over it. Lose a little bit of the boat there if we have to, but it's okay. I'll run that through there. Kind of feel now that I just want to strengthen up some of these darks in here a little. Because really, this is our dark mass here, and in order to make the overall painting read well, it's got to have that feeling of a dark mass. So look, I'd highly recommend doing little studies like this. Which I know is not as exciting as doing finished paintings, but it trains you to see things better. There's some interesting little temperature shifts in the way he's applied the paint here as well. Okay. That little bridge, he's got a nice warm tone. It sort of pulls the eye in that direction. So, and we've got something happening in there. My drawing's out a little bit, so there's a bit more space in there. All right. All right. Now there's some patches of white. It looks like smoke. I'll just put a little bit of it in. It's sort of up in there. You don't need to put it all in. So the water here, I'm going to start off with a lighter value and just get a little bit darker. I'm not going to put every brush mark in, obviously. Because again, I'm just trying to find patterns of darks and lights. So I'm going to group all those little brush marks because there's, in every part of the water there, you've got both darks and lights. I'm just going to group it together as best I can and do it as a bit of a gradient. So when we start the painting with the Masters program, I'm probably going to do a little 10-minute values study like this for each of them, just so I get it clear in my mind. What's the big dominant mass of dark and where are the lights and so on? And I'd recommend you do the same. Because that way you can start working out some of the challenges in the painting right up front. Jury's still out as to whether I'm liking this paper or not. Tell you, for those who are in our Artist Business Academy looking to sell their artwork, it's not a bad option for doing small paintings to sell. I've got a whole lot of frames that I bought from IKEA recently that are A4, and so this is an A4 A4 shaped surface, which would just slip straight into that frame. There's our water. I just feel like we need to distinguish the embankment of this river. He hasn't had to do it in his version. I just feel like a little dark accent along there will just help to separate that out a bit. And thus far I've used one brush, which is a bit of a mistake. I probably in hindsight would have been better to have had a brush for each of the values, because I've dirtied things up a bit. That actually runs more that way. Like so. Still feels I need to push that dark a little in the trees. That's a bit better. Just lacking enough contrast to read well. But the reason why I chose this particular painting is because the values are really, it's very close values range apart from the darkest dark. It's very, very close. Now I haven't got enough dark in my water either. Let me come in and start adding some of those little marks in. But I suspect that this sort of brushwork and approach he picked up when he went to Paris and started to see, Renoir and Pissarro and Sicily, Monet, that he would have started to explore their paintings. And because when you see the master's analysis, which I'll upload the next day or so into the members area, you'll see that some of his other work is it's a little bit different. This is clearly a French Impressionist influence sort of painting. Okay. Okay, let us just get a couple of little dark accents in here and there. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in. Make sure you're out of the shot rod, which just increases the degree of difficulty. I don't need to overly detail this up, you get the idea, I'm sure. But I'd suggest have a go at this one and find some other old master paintings that you like their work and really examine their values pattern. Don't agonise over it. There's no point spending 3 hours doing this unless you, well, if you're going to spend 3 hours, do it on a larger scale. It's got a whole lot of people crossing the bridge there. Love to know what bridge it is. I mean, it may not be there today because this would have been pre-World War II. It was about 1920 this painting was done. Couple of dark accents in the brickwork there, here and there. Every time I push those lights back in, it throws me out, so I'm just going to treat this as more of one big dark mass, just so that it reads as this is the big area dark, and the rest of it's all a very tight value around the lighter values. All right, that's a bit of fun. Suggest you have a go at doing something similar. If you're in the members area of the Learn to Paint Academy, I've just uploaded about 40 or 50 of Curvin's paintings, and we'll be doing an analysis on them coming right up. Steve, the IKEA frames have like a perspex in them rather than glass, so it makes them ideal for shipping. What's holding my painting board up? The blue is just tape. Yeah, it's just painter's tape, and I've taped the paper to the backboard there. Anybody have any questions? Canvas pad or paper? It just says oil pad. It has a paper-like feel. It says paper type, linen texture. I'd have to have another go at it, I think, to make up my mind. The one I use is 100% cotton. Where's my mouse gone? Who's got my mouse? There we are. Yeah, this doesn't have a toothy grain. It has a very flat paper-like grain. Undecided if I like it. JD says amazing, looks like the Gold Coast rivers with the bridges and rivers. Yeah, it also had a little bit of a Tuscany feel, not Tuscany, Venice with that bridge. R. Salts has asked, you are very easy to follow. Would I do exactly the same as you if I use acrylics? Yeah, absolutely, exactly the same, yeah. Just watch out with acrylics that you, if they start to get tacky or sticky, they're difficult to paint on when they're sticky. So you have to let them fully dry if they're going sticky, or rehydrate them depending on what acrylic you're using. Sherry says, if you frame the sheet, what do you mount it on before you frame it? If you frame the sheet, well, look, to be honest, this is the first time I've ever used this, so I don't really have a plan. But what I was thinking was, if I show you this. And I'm not going to do it with this one. This is just a little black and white study, right? But if I have a go at the actual colour version of it and take a bit more time, I bought these frames and it's got a mat already in there. The opening is A4, same size as that, which poses a little bit of a problem. If it was just slightly less than A4, it would be better, right? Means I have to paint up to the edges. But it has a clear Perspex in there, right? And, but, you know, painting on those paper pads or canvas pads would go ideal with those frames, I suspect. Can you paint in colour over this grayscale? You could do, Manju. I'd let it dry off first, but I wouldn't, because I've done it way too roughly and so on, and I can see that I've got my wall tilting the wrong way. Now that I'm looking at it from a distance, and my tree, yeah. So there's a lot of drawing issues there. So I wouldn't, but you could, yeah. Sonia, I have a question about 3mm MDF board. What is the biggest size you can use as a painting if you're framing it? Well, it comes down to a weight issue once it gets to a certain size. So when I get to about 16 by 20 and above, I start to go to stretch canvas. You know, I paint often in 20 by 28 inch canvas. So I wouldn't do that as a board necessarily. It does get quite weighty. Upstairs I've got the big Brian Cook painting on board, and it's framed and it's pretty heavy. In fact, one of the Brian Cook paintings I had at home, I didn't have a proper, I just had a standard size little picture hook on the wall, and we hung the painting up, and because of the weight of it, it pulled out and fell down, and the frame got a bit damaged. So yeah, once you get above 16 by 20, 20 by 24, I'm tending to go to stretched canvas at that point, yeah. Meryl said, I've used Montmartre canvas pads, found it good. Oh, terrific, I'll have to try those. I think somebody else mentioned those. Holes? I'm not really sure what you're talking about as far as the holes go. Somebody asked, Gary, are you a believer in squinting to recognise values and shapes? Gary, over the years I've heard lots and lots of artists talk about squinting, and I find it difficult to really, I don't know, to squint and really be able to distinguish much from it. So I'm not discounting the value of it. I think it works for some people, doesn't necessarily work for other people, is what I've, me being one of those. I've never really found any benefit of it. But I've certainly heard plenty of artists talk about it, and I guess like everything with learning to paint and mastering painting, that you give it a go, and if it works for you, then do it. If it doesn't, then like me, I stopped beating myself up about it, because for years I tried squinting to try and distinguish shapes and values, and I couldn't really see what the artist mentioning it could see, and so I felt like there was something wrong with me, right? Which is not the case. We just see things differently. If it works for you, then absolutely keep doing it. If it doesn't, then no big deal. So would you use the Perspex over the oil paint? Yeah, I don't see why not. I don't think there's an issue with that. The fact that it's on a paper-like surface, probably it's better to have that sort of protection, I'd say. Thank you, Joni. G'day, Colin. Colin's got a couple of those Art Spectrum pads. They're quite good. Yeah, it's my first go. Wouldn't say I was thrilled with it, but as with everything, it takes a few goes to get used to. There you go, Becky. Becky's had the same experience as me with squinting. Thank you, John. Appreciate that. No live stream tomorrow. And on Friday, we won't be doing our coffee chat. We will be doing a Artist Business Academy live stream for those of you in the Artist Business Academy. And then we'll see what happens for next week. The Montmartre canvas pads I use had more holes and showed through the painting. Okay. Very good, Janet. All right, well, we're going to wrap it up there, friends. I hope that's been of help. I would suggest that if you're in the Learn to Paint Academy, I know the challenge we've been doing this month for members. We've been doing basically this little studies, but I thought when I uploaded Coritin's photos, this one stood out to me because when you look at it in colour, it looks like there's a whole range of values, but when you come into the grayscale, you can see that it's really one big dark mass and then a very tight range of lighter values around it. So from a notan point of view, which we'll cover notan in our values course down the track, it's really two different values if you're using a notan type philosophy. So from that perspective, quite interesting. So I recommend grabbing your favourite master artist paintings, analyse the values and do a 10 or 15 minute study like we've done here today, and make it a regular habit. If you do one of these every week, even as a warm-up painting, to your regular painting, you will find that you greatly improve. And we're going to do more of that on our Wednesday live streams. I've recently bought a bust head, and we're going to have a go at doing that as well, getting the planes of the head, light and shadow. That's something I've been wanting to really improve in for a long time. So we're going to have a go at doing that in the not too distant future. Where do you find the monthly challenge? If you're a member, if you're a full access member in the Learn to Paint Academy, just go to groups and go to the challenge group. Each month, except for when we're running our major challenges, we have a little mini challenge for members there. Okay, all right, friends. Well, thank you all very much for joining me today. I hope it's been of help. I'll chat with some of you on Friday, those in the Artist Business Academy, and hopefully we'll